Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's not quite episode of Roll20 Presents Apocalypse World. I say not quite episode because we're not actually playing the game because we're done.
Yeah.
Shit is over.
The game is over.
The end of the world is ended. With another
if you haven't watched episodes 1 through 9,
yeah,
you should probably leave.
Get the fuck out of here. Get out.
You should definitely do it.
Or don't.
There might be spoilers.
There's definitely going to be some spoilers. A spoiler city. Starting with, it's over. That's the first spoiler.
Spoiler number 1. It's
Spoiler
9
number
episodes.
one. So this is our little post show. We've done this once or twice before, where after a game is complete, in the interim between the campaign and the campaign, we sit down and we talk about the game that we played. We're going to be talking about the narrative stuff in the game, how we felt about like the themes and kind of what went on in the game and how they were affected by the mechanics, which we will also discuss. We're talking about the Powered by the Apocalypse system and Apocalypse World 2nd Edition in particular. I'm going to talk a little bit about the GMing side of it, talk about kind of the tools that I use to prep and manage the game, because I know my players, if they were behaving themselves, didn't get to see much or any of that. I don't know if you audience wise, if you're watching this live, if you have questions about the game, we will try to answer them for you. If you're watching this on YouTube, there is a system in which you can comment on things, and I know I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll make sure people's attention get drawn to it if they have questions for you specifically. But before we start, though, I want to show something off. Hold on. I have a blank.
Oh, I know.
I have a blank screen that I want to.
This is.
So we got some fan art. You may have seen an iteration of it before. Cesius Cookies has been making some cool stuff for us, and I want to see if I can.
I have to get in the Roll20. Hang on.
I'm gonna show it on stream. Oh, I'm gonna just show it on the stream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And also, it's on Twitter.
Boop.
I mean, I know. I've seen
Look at
it. But I just want to look at it again.
Look how cute it is. I love it. It's so good. It's such good
It's
fan
very
art.
great.
So these are the characters, both alive and dead, up until episode 9. We didn't get to learn much about Scrap, but Scrap was a latecomer to the game. Scrap was just a giant robot who got shit done. But thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
he
you,
killed
Cesius
those
Cookies.
fucking guys though. Killed them so good.
Killed them so good.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, I was thinking about this. I want to start the discussion by hearing from folks who have not played Apocalypse World or a Powered by the Apocalypse World game before. Dave, this is not your first rodeo in the Apocalypse, is it? No, you've played
No,
before.
I have played and run it.
How many times have you played Apocalypse World, would you say, Andrew? Like 10, 20? How many campaigns? Not like sessions, because that would be a lot. Right.
Or 7?
Yeah. I'm around there too. Yeah, like 7 or 8, I think. So we've got lots of experience. But Elf, had you played Power
Well, I mean, I played Dungeon World with you guys. That one shot.
That game doesn't count.
And then I played Monster Hearts like that one shot, and then I played Monster Hearts again like that one shot.
I don't think one shots are the same.
I've never played Powered by the Apocalypse like campaign before this one. Definitely.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It is like 100% my type of game in terms of like it is all narrative and like driven by your actions, and like things are all created through collaborative storytelling to a degree, which like I'm all about. I really, really enjoy sort of like being a character and getting into a character. And so it's like completely like the mechanics support the stuff I like.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So in what ways did you feel like the game did that for you? Like in what ways helped you get into a position of feeling like you were portraying your character? So
stuff like, here are the connections you have with the other characters. It's really, really good, you know, like.
Oh yeah, we forgot to do Hex at the end of the.
Yeah. When we were starting, like the bonds were really important for like getting into like the position we were in, and sort of the setup was all very like, it's very immersive in the way that it, I don't know, that it sort of like put everybody together. But then there was stuff like when I was playing dice. Okay, I got a bar. What is this bar? How does it operate? I get to design this thing, and then that may shape what is going on around it, you know? what are these NPCs? Who are they? You know, like I need to have 5 people that I detail to a certain degree, you know, at least, who will be around, you know?
I feel like from an MC's perspective, you know, watching you play your characters, I think that something that the Powered by the Apocalypse system did particularly well to highlight the kind of player that you are is that these games are about continued ongoing momentum. They're about the movement from one event to another. And you tend to play your characters like burning dumpsters flying down a hill at maximum speed.
Come on, that's not that bad.
It's not a bad thing. It's a very, very good thing. It's just that, you know, you for starting from the very beginning, you light yourself on fire and then like hurl towards danger at maximum velocity. And I thought initially that was just how Dice was, but that's how all of your characters were, like how all the way you played your characters in this. And it's not a criticism at all, because I think that there was absolutely nuance in the path you were taking down the hill, but like, you know, you're like Heron was as much of a dumpster fire as Dice was. Like,
I mean, yeah, but I think the thing for me, right, is that like my general philosophy on characters and role playing games is like characters exist to suffer. Like I want to hurt them. You know, like, because if there isn't pathos, you know, like a certain amount of like emotion in that, because if their life is good and everything is cool, like,
I think,
what are you gonna do?
and I think, and this is something I want to talk about. We'll talk about this a little later, but I definitely wanted to talk about like the idea of status quo in Apocalypse World. I think Tynant is a really good example of how status quo works in the game, but we'll come back to that. I think that part of what I think is really interesting about the style of play that it seems that you have, and the way that the game works, is that it is often easier to control the ways in which your character comes apart than try to hold them together, right? Like, if you're striving for success, then only a certain percentage of your rolls will be moving you towards that. But if you're just looking for interesting shit to happen, even failure feels like a move forward, right, in that direction. Hence down the hill, hence on fire. And I think it's a good strategy. It's how you win. It's how you win at Apocalypse World.
Initially, when you said that, I was like, "Ow!" But now I'm kind of like, "Yeah, no, I do. I definitely do that."
Like so many truths. Harsh.
Like
Right.
so many truths.
Like that's the thing about Apocalypse World, right? We don't get acoustic guitars and kumbaya around the campfire. We get lighting garbage on fire and pushing it down a hill, and that's our thing. That's what these stories are about. And I think that it really played to that. Blue Jay, you likely have and I don't mean this as any kind of slight. You have the least experience with role playing games of everybody here.
Yep, that's me.
And this was your first like really extended foray into the Powered by the Apocalypse system. How did you feel about it, and particularly compared and contrasted to like your other experiences with like D&D, both here and with Misclicks and like other games that you've played?
I mean, I of course, like same with Elf, I love the setup narratively, how you create together the world that your characters exist in. I think that was super fun, and it really had you invested not just in your character's journey, but also like just the general everything. The existence of the world as it was due to like a collaborative effort, and that was really cool to experience. I also really like the 2d6 plus etc. versus a d20 rule, because I feel like it illustrates more what you are good at more often. You know, like if I roll a d20 for, you know, perception, like I could be really bad at something that I ought to be very good at. Whereas if I roll
you're describing, and I am the last person to listen to when you want somebody to talk about math, but I know enough about it to be able to say that, yeah, there's a very, very early on in role-playing games, there was a division between 2d6 plus a thing and d20 plus a thing, and that intensive swinginess that can come with the chaos plateau that D&D presents versus the like pretty reliable results of
2d6 is really consistently going to give you.
And that's the thing, is like when you're creating a character who has a background and you're trying to be like, okay, this character is really weird, so they ought to be good at being weird, right? But in
Yeah.
Dragons, it would be like they're sometimes okay at it, and other times they're fucking horrible.
What I think helps with playing and characterizing your experience in Apocalypse World, and also like distinctly for MCing, is in Dungeons and Dragons, it's a much more binary switch between did you get what you want, did you not get what you want, right? Did you roll, even if you're rolling like +10, you can still definitely fuck up and roll badly, and the Chaos Plateau will screw you. Even though it doesn't make sense. You can position yourself as the world's greatest ranger or whatever, but you can still roll a 1. So you end up succeeding or failing, and the GM really only has 2 choices there. But in Apocalypse World, you can fictionally position your character as being good at something, but failing the role doesn't mean the character necessarily like looks like an idiot or doesn't do the thing. Like there was a few examples that I had the opportunity to do in our game where a character had fictionally positioned themselves such that just straight up failing would have been incongruous with the ongoing narrative, right? For me, just being like, cool, no, it doesn't happen, isn't that embarrassing for you? And instead, giving you the thing that you want with some negative stuff attached. And
well, and the mechanics really, they align with that in that, in terms of like the success or failure has consequences, but sometimes like even if you fail, it's still like whatever effect you want still happens. It's just then the consequences are more dire. Mechanically within the Apocalypse World rule system, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a thing, right? Like it's interesting to, it gives you the opportunity, I think, because the GM in this game has the tools to respond variably to a failure. It allows you to fictionally position your character and to discuss your character as being a certain way, but not allowing failure to essentially embarrass your character and to deflate that sense of who they are. Because as you said, it's really hard to be like, I identify my character as being very weird, but I've like failed 3 weird rolls in a row, even though I have a +3 just because of bad luck. Why is this not working? This is my character's thing. So you have to find ways.
And like you said before, like the failures sometimes contribute to the plot in ways that are positive and not negative.
Well, and I would posit that there's no such thing really as positive or negative in terms of, like, I think this game and games like it move away from the idea that failure is bad and success is good inherently.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that the way that sort of death, quote unquote, works in this game is sort of a contributor to that as well. Because like if you fail and get shot a whole bunch of times, and then you fail again and get shot a whole bunch of times, that doesn't necessarily mean the story's over. You know, like in the same way that like it just moves forward. It's like the momentum thing, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did it? And I'd like to see if this is how the game felt for you, because doing the GM turns, this is an open question for everybody, but doing the GM turns and MCing Apocalypse World, Apocalypse World starts here and ends somewhere down here, and you will never get back up here. You'll never, like, the characters are often in the most stable position when they begin the game, and because of the way that multiple threats work and because of the way that countdown clocks work, you'll never be able to spin all the plates at the same time, and so things will start falling down around you. Did it feel like you could progress from that stable place to wherever we ended up? And unlike D&D, you weren't winning. You didn't win at Apocalypse World. We just ended up in a different place where things weren't that good.
I feel
how did that feel?
It was a weird experience for me with Ferris, because I think he started going downhill until he got attached to a purpose. He entered way higher, actually.
I have a similar feeling for Brace. Is that I feel like Dave and I's characters both kind of started without like clear fictional goals.
Yeah, it was stable, but like nothing was happening, and that's probably worse for them than like.
Well, I think,
and then at the end of it, we had things that we were going for, and it was a lot more rewarding as a player also to have a character who had agency, who wanted something, who had like desires and methods in which to get them.
Well, and I'd love to, Andrew, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because you have lots of experience both playing these kinds of characters and being in the space of Apocalypse World. But I think that what you're describing, for Ferris and for Brace is a very typical story, like arc, a narrative arc for the brainer and for the savvy head, right? that if you don't have something to do, you end up being someone else's property or just following someone else around. Like that's the experience that I've had. I've played both a Savvy Head and a Brainer, and that's for me. That's exactly how that play went. Like until I found my own thing to focus on, it was very much just someone who already has fictional power, and I'm gonna like do things for them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
The
think?
other thing I'll add is that the stuff that y'all got with your characters was stolen from me
Yes.
across the board, right? Like it necessarily victimized someone else in order for you to get a thing.
I was gonna say that like Dave and Blue Jay, you know, your goals for your character came directly at the expense of like look at how Templetown ended up, right?
So fucked.
The person who held it stable died, killed by raiders, and destabilized by Tynant's behavior initially, which I'm not passing
I
judgment,
like to
that's
think the
okay.
downfall of Templetown started with Rolf Ball careening off a cliff into a tree.
I love the passive voice there, not me killing Rolf Ball, but Rolf Ball just mysteriously flying off the highway. So, you know, there's that, yeah, and then Rolf Ball, shitty though he was, you know, as a stabilizing element being removed, and then the entirety of the town becoming both emaciated by lack of water and also addicted to a horrible psychic drug, right? Like Templetown died for your players or your characters' goals.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Apocalypse World fundamentally is a game about community, right? Community and scarcity. And I think that the winners of this game, you know,
I mean,
it was the Maelstrom, but also
Yeah,
like
the community we elected to preserve was a community of ghosts.
we scarcitied the fuck out of them. That's all I'm gonna say. Like,
I mean, I think that in terms of taking everything from Andrew's character, as like both myself definitely and Ferris to a lesser extent did, I think it was like you had to take purpose. Like I felt like I didn't want my character to just be wandering through the world aimlessly for the entire campaign. Obviously, that's not something that is maintainable in an entertaining way for myself. But I feel like it was you had to take it from somewhere. And Adam, you offered obviously the trench drugs route, the whole like Rothball power structure route. But me as a person being less comfortable with that, I was just like, all right, instead,
right.
let's do other things.
I mean, there is an alternate version of this universe where like Ferris threw in with Rolf Ball. The town was stable, and the main conflict was between Jeanette's gang and the like fortress town that y'all were like a part of. But it didn't go that way, right? It was undermined by the conflicts that came up. I think it's interesting for me as an MC of the game. Like I can't offer you anything without cost. I can give you what you earn, but I can't just be like, here is something good to have. It's like, here is something good, but at a cost, connected to other things that may not be good. You have to make a hard decision. There feels to me a downward gravity to Apocalypse World as an MC that I personally really like. But
the only time you start to get around that is if you like it's very telling that none of us took the like get an ally improvement,
right?
Where you can, you know, advance some of the moves and make some positive outcomes happen, because those are how you can actually
advancing basic move stuff.
Yeah, they're like super significant, and yeah, none of us took it.
I mean, that for me was a lack of knowledge rather than not wanting to go in that route.
Well, I mean, like I'm not saying this as like no one took it, this is bad, but just like we didn't have that tool set, and so our main thing that we could do was.
So I have a question just on that sort of topic, because I think this is a very interesting point about role-playing games generally, but about Apocalypse World specifically. So in Dungeons and Dragons, to win at D&D, you stay alive. That's your main thing, because you can't keep winning if you're dead. You stay alive, you get experience points as fast as possible, and as optimally as possible, keeping point 1 in mind. And then you get gear, which helps you towards goal 2, right? Like gaining levels and however you do that is the main goal in that game. How do you think you win at Apocalypse World? What's the victory condition for a game like this?
I think, like, in my experience, and this is just like stating this might not be a direct answer to how do you win.
Sure.
But what I will say is that, like, from a perspective of like this campaign, I think we won in that it ended and that it was interesting. Like Apocalypse World seems to be a thing where, and again, like my own personal experience, but I had more fun frantically begging to torture the crap out of Greg at the end of that game.
That was such a good resolution.
Than I did at level 10 in D&D beating up some dragon and winning the day. You know what I mean? Like, it was the same level of like, oh, this is like a climactic thing, you know, that is happening. And so I think it's just a win that way in terms of I felt good about it, therefore it's a win.
It's like the pursuit of an emotional thing.
Well, it's also like with any story, there was a end. There was a clear moment in which like things were done. And it's not necessarily like things were better or things are the way that I wanted them to be originally, or things are like good for my character now and we can walk off into the sunset. It's like there was a clear moment where we all made choices to say like, okay, this is an end. And I feel like it's not winning per se, but it's satisfying as a player to have that like conflict resolution and, you know, close it.
What do you think, Dave? Do you have feelings on this matter?
Yeah, I don't generally think I'm very good at playing Apocalypse World because I'd take the stance that you don't win, and that makes it a little bit hard for me to work out what to do and how to engage with it. I guess if I were to reclassify what it is to win in Apocalypse World, you know, like kind of a looser sense, I think it touches upon what everybody else has said about like the narrative of it and just being interested in what's happening and being excited to turn up to a session and contribute to it in a way that makes you kind of happy. So I started off, I think I was winning. Then for a while, I didn't really know what I was doing during the sessions, so I was losing a bit there. And then towards the end, everything was just like super cool. For like the last 3 sessions, everything was super rad. So I was like, yeah, every time. I don't even know what I'm going to do this time. I've not planned anything out. I've not even taken my advances until I think I can do an interesting thing with them.
So like personal fulfillment as a win condition, as it were.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that is a decent way of putting it. Yeah, that seems fair. But typically in the past, I've not been very good when the character like really does feel like a downward spiral, just because I find the conceptual parts of games like this much more interesting. That's why I like to play the characters who are based on weird, where you can inject stuff into the fiction, like on a conceptual level. But I never really play the characters who are interpersonal, just because I'm not saying this makes me have a unique experience or whatever, but I have like maybe a slightly more difficult time than maybe some other folks working out what do I want to say? Like small discrepancies or the specifics of interpersonal relationships and stuff. So I find it harder to know in a given conversation how my character wants something to go, because I can't like envision them on that like deep level. I feel like I'm playing a character when I do that for myself. So having to have a role play,
right, of course,
that deep, and being able to understand them on that kind of level is a bit tricky. So for me, yeah, winning is definitely about having the control of the fiction and, bits of control of the fiction. And being in a position where when you make a roll and just being like, if I win, I get to do something cool. I'm equally super interested to see where like Adam goes with it if I fail.
Yeah.
Like, thing is on the periphery that we can bring it.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, and I definitely noticed some of that interchange for like you and I in this game, in that there are a few things in Apocalypse World where the GM or the MC's authority is very specifically and clearly defined, and the idea of asking questions of the players, it's really up to the MC to decide. Like, you can play Apocalypse World very, very traditionally and never get input about non-character stuff from the players. You can never ask, what's in the room? What does this character look like? What's this person's name? The kinds of traditional stuff that the GM is responsible for, that's a thing you can just do. But you can also play it very, very much on the other end of the spectrum, where the MC is barely making up anything and just managing the fronts and the threats, and just constantly asking, what is this about? What's this thing? I tend to fall somewhere on the traditional side of medium when I play Apocalypse World. But it is interesting that it's not a thing necessarily that the players have reliable control over. The only things the players really are fundamentally allowed to have say over is their moves and the choices they make for their characters. Everything outside of that is sort of at the MC's discretion, whether they want to ask or not, which is, I think, something that makes Apocalypse World a game that plays better the more often you play with the same people. Because you learn what the players want, and the kinds of interactions that you have with individual players, it changes the game very dramatically, I think.
I think for me, like, it's an interesting. It was interesting to play this game versus obviously the Dungeons and Dragons, like the only other experience I really have, campaign wise, because you, like, in essence, like the source, when Brace took the source inside of her, there's nothing that says anything about what that means. Like, there's nothing that says anything about what my character can or cannot do now. Like, there's no rules for anything about a lot of the stuff in the game. And so it's like, well, can I do this with this? And you're just like, I don't know. Like, can you? Like,
right.
Or like, yeah, no, like, no, you can't.
Yeah. Like, there's no kind of library of magic items.
Exactly. There's no magic items library. And so you do something and you're just like, okay, so what can I do with this? And you're just like, I don't know. Like, what do you want to do with it? Like, how would you go about doing this thing? And I'm just like, I don't know. Tell me how this works.
I mean, and that's part of the MC's principles and agenda, right? In that, like, anything that doesn't have a clearly defined move that a player wants their character to do becomes an MC making a move, right? Like, if you look to me and you ask, what happens when I do whatever, and I don't have a custom move for it, and there were a few, right? There were a few, we didn't see them a ton, but there were a few that happened throughout the game. But for the most part, when you look to me to say, I do this, what happens? It's my job to pick one of my moves and just make it, to say, I have authority over this moment because you don't have a move for it. But the flip side becomes true, in that if you trigger a move, I'm not allowed to do anything except follow the rules of that move, right? If you go aggro on somebody, unless I have a custom move, like, you never interacted with her, but I had a custom move for Jeanette that said, when you go aggro on Jeanette, don't. Like, you can't. She just does not respond to that shit. It's not, you have to either pull the trigger or fuck off, right? But if I don't have a move like that, any of the moves that you make, we have to follow the process of the moves. There's no going around them, which is why, like, you can't seize by force with a gun without having to shoot somebody with it. Like, it's just, we're tied to those mechanics. So it is interesting and requires a fair bit of sort of quick footwork on the part of the players and the MC to get around those situations where you're like, well, I have this fictional thing now. I would like to do something with it, but we don't have a move for that necessarily. Which I think is cool, and I think that if that comes up enough, it sort of behooves the players and the MC especially, to make a custom move for something like that. Like, if you just keep finding that you're doing a thing that doesn't have a mechanism in the fiction, but it feels like there should be one, the game does have rules and space to do that. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Tynan for a minute, shall we?
Let's do it.
So I found on a kind of like personal political level, I found that the interaction between you and I, Andrew, vis-a-vis Tynan, really interesting, because right away I feel like I picked up on what you were trying to do with Tynan and Tynan's little project, and it was hard for me to be like, I have no problem being a pessimist. Nihilism runs in my blood. But when you were like, here's this thing, and I'm like, oh, I agree with that. That's
Yeah,
a cool
right?
that's a cool thing. I'm interested in that. Let's explore what that might be like. But then I'm like, nope, that is not my job. My job is to undermine and erode that thing. Like, as soon as you say these are the rules, this is the law, this is how things are, I have to try to take that apart. I have to be like,
Yeah.
well, okay, except that entropy exists, so let's take apart this thing. How did you feel playing the water bear? This is a new playbook. This is a new thing for Apocalypse World. What was that like for you?
So for me, there were a few things going on. Like one being that one of my jobs that I have right now is a workers collective. So I am like actively involved in like an anarchist thing.
Yeah.
And so making one in the game and like the way that it destroyed itself, and like the way that Tynan engaged with it was all like a reflection of like gripes I had in my own personal life, basically.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, like it falling to pieces and all this kind of stuff was like close to home, but also like aligned with my like being pissed off at some people in this thing that I'm involved in. So yeah, it was kind of like close to home for me in that way. But also like it was me trying to think of like, well, how would people actually live and like what would actually work? What is a structure that could be sustainable? Even if it didn't end up being that, I at least wanted it to start in a place where it could be. And then it was interesting for me to be like, yeah, and this is what destroys that kind of space.
Right.
Because I've seen that happen in my own life. And I was just like, yeah, like people like Tynan kill that kind of stuff by, you know, choking out other people's agency.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's fascinating with the Hocus, the Hardholder, now the Water Bearer, really anyone who starts in a position of authorial power. Their story is inherently a story of a fall from that power, right? You don't often end with a Hardholder who has a bigger Hardhold at the end of the game than they started with, unless the whole game supports that. So the other approach, I think, to that kind of thing is to start not in that position and to move towards it, to try to build the thing out of the ruins
to like
of the
become
game.
the water bearer.
Yeah.
Or become
Yeah, the
focused.
Apocalypse World
Yeah.
is a game about change, right? So if you are that thing to start, you know fundamentally that it's going to be different by the end, right?
Yeah.
So me saying here's a bunch of good stuff is basically me saying we're not going to end in a good place, like almost by definition, because all of it has to change.
Yeah.
And it's never going to change in a way that is like strictly an improvement. Parts of it might improve, but other parts of it are going to fall away and morph.
And that can be very hard, I think, for players who are not like I knew it was safe for me to MC the way I usually do with Tynan and to be like, that cool thing that you have, let's fuck it up. Let's get in there and fuck it up. Because I know that you knew that was coming, like that you knew that was a possibility and that would be a thing. But it can be, I think, hard for MCs and for players of the game to be in this position where a player makes choices by setting up their character. And traditionally, we've been taught in a lot of role-playing games not to go after the things that make a character who they are, right? It's like, it's not fair to throw the wizard spellbook in a fire. It's not fair to kill the ranger's animal companion, right? It's undermining the choices that they've made as a player. Whereas I think that forcing players to struggle with their character identity, and this comes from this game, it comes from playing Burning Wheel a lot. The idea of being like, oh yeah, you're the hard holder. Well, what if this happened? You know, and I think it can be,
Who do you become?
it can be hard as a player because, you know, you do pick a thing that you think is cool and interesting, and then the MC's job is to like mess with it, and that
You just can't be overly precious with anything.
Yeah, I think
Which,
that's...
yeah, it's an important lesson for life in general, because you know what? Things break.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you just have to find things that are interesting about... I mean, the game is not called Apocalypse World because it's like cute, right? It's not just like a choice that Vincent made flippantly. The game is about the world. It's not Apocalypse Party. It's not Apocalypse your character, right? It's the things that are going on in the larger scale and your part in them. But we don't care what shape
holds and brainers.
Yeah, we don't care what your shape is. We just want to see how you fit into the broken glass of the world, right? Like it's And that's hard. I think that's really hard because if you come from a position of playing D&D, you get attached to the way that your character is, and you have an arc for that character that is mechanically defined.
Well, and D&D characters only get new stuff.
Yeah, they
Right.
only
Like,
improve.
You don't lose
continue
things.
to accumulate more and more stuff. And the only time you would ever get rid of anything is when you have something better.
Mhm.
Whereas in Apocalypse World, everything, it's the complete opposite. Right?
You're often losing everything. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a completely different notion of character development, right? You like Heron, you carve away and reveal something cool inside of this like chunk of meat.
And something horrible.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
I think that there's no like how do we pass judgment on the characters? Like we struggled with this a little bit throughout the game, where I think there was a lot of realization that like the characters that we were playing were not I don't want to say not
Heroes?
good, but yeah, there was next to nothing heroic about them in the traditional sense, that they were characters with their own desires about how to change the world, what to do with it, and often they were ones that we would probably not approve of as people.
Mhm.
How did that feel playing a game like that? I mean, this question is particularly aimed at you, Elf, but like overall, like I think we were making choices for our characters.
I have an absolute love, like an adoration for the compelling villain, you know, like the relatable villain, the person who with a slight twist of fate would have been the hero but isn't, you know, and through making choices they have damned themselves thrice over, sort of thing, like, you know, and they don't give up, they just continue to like do the thing that is bad, but it's what they know and it's how they do. And you know, like maybe they feel guilty about it, maybe they don't, maybe they, you know, maybe they're reckless because they actually just want to be dead, you know, like maybe they are so dedicated they can't see past their own noses. Like I am a huge fan of making a villain or a character generally, but like villain is the thing I go to because like villains are bad. But making a character that is a person, you know, like especially with bad subjects and nasty things. Like I want you to be able to go, I see where the evil is coming from, not, oh, it's mustache twirling evil for no reason, you know, like I don't go around butchering people for no reason, you know, like there
You
is
do go around butchering people.
I
well,
think,
you know what I mean.
I think the thing is too is that like, and this was a thing that I don't think we even really realized initially when Heron entered the game, but there's massive space for player authorship by way of the choices that you make and the moves that get triggered in the game that affect the world. Even if the world is going to continue to crumble around you, the fact that our Skinner in this game, the literal embodiment of all things beautiful, was so dark, cast a shadow over the whole game, right? Because I was beholden to making all of the NPCs, at the very least, admirers of, but for the most part, like obsessed with your work, right? Like, had your work been pastoral, had it been like Heron is all about creating safe environments in which to grow flowers, that would be, it would have been a completely different world, because I still would have been bound to Heron as the Skinner, as a flagpole in the, steaming ruin of the world of beauty and light, right? Like it doesn't matter that.
And I think it also says a lot about how I play characters that I didn't even think of that.
Right. Like it literally says it in the playbook.
My brain did not go, oh, I can make a positive change here. My brain went, how can I make this awful?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I posit the question to you, like, was Heron really any worse than Dice? Like, in terms
this is the thing. Like, do we
villainy?
I try to
sorry, Dice.
I struggle with this, and I'm curious about everybody's opinion, in that when we play a game, when we create a fictional universe, we cannot help but bring our own either personal sense of morals and ethics into the game world, or the socialized sense of morals and ethics that we have. We bring them into the world. So, like, for example, the fact that Rolf Ball's main jam was manufacturing addictive drugs, was a bad thing because we brought a lot of that with us into the game. Like I constantly had to think about, would the characters in this game see Rolf Ball in a negative light because of this? Like, would they consider this system to be a bad thing for them?
Drugs would be one of the very few ways in which people could actually feel good in the apocalypse, right? Like,
yeah, like I think that we carry that stuff into the game with us, and then we have to either combat it or not, right? And
well, and it's funny too, because no one killed Rolf Ball because he was a bad person for making drugs. It was just like, no, but I want to sell the drugs. Give me the drugs.
I mean, if you want to know my motivation there, it was literally, you pissed me off, so you have to die now. Like,
yeah,
that's it. Like, you think you're in charge of me, but no one's in charge of me, so fuck you.
My name is my name.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had an opportunity for a different discussion in terms of like whether something is inherently good or bad vis-a-vis drugs. Like with the moment when you're like, okay, Rolf Ball gives you this drug brace, and it's literally the best thing you've ever felt.
Yeah.
Like, period, in your whole life. And like,
I feel like it was you that said that, not Adam, though. Like,
I think he did say something about
feel like it was you that said like this was the best experience Brace has ever had. In
well, he described that it was nice and warm and blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
and like I made the jump to Brace.
I mean, that's the thing. I chose to describe it in a way that I knew would be. I thought of all of the times in the game that Brace had been uncomfortable or complained about something, or something had been bad for Brace, and was like, all right, let's just describe the opposite of that happening to you. Like that was very intentionally a thing.
And yeah, and I feel like there was an opportunity for a deeper discussion in terms of like inherent goodness or badness there, but I drove away from that like as a person, just because of my like experiences. So like I feel like it could have been a discussion we went more into, but I feel where we ended up going was more in terms of the like competition and the power structure as opposed to the inherent nature of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that Apocalypse World is a game designed for that mechanically. Like, we're not supposed to pass judgment on these things. We're supposed to think about what our characters want and then pursue those things. But also as players engage the mechanisms in the game in a way that's interesting to us. But I think that after the fact, like in moments like this, we can look back at the game and examine where those things happened. And I think that's interesting, because the game itself isn't about that exactly. Yeah. So
I mean, no one stopped Tynant from doing all the fucked up things they were doing.
I mean, and that's an interesting thing, right? Because you put like from the beginning, you know, like, and I'm talking like back even to our one shot that was like before this that set it up as like a certain thing. Like, Tynant was this character that like had authority and was presented in such a way that like in a TV show, I could see the initial episode being about how Tynant is the good guy. You know what I mean? And like how Tynant is the person who has got some kind of order in this world that is like positive and good and whatever. But then it changed, like over time. It was like, wow, not a good person, not good. You know, like no, bad.
The way I tried to play them was being caught between two like irreconcilable groups, right? Like the dead with their rules, and then real people being alive and trying to live by those. And Tynant is here wedged in the middle, and beholden to both groups, right?
Well, and I think that in terms of like play as well, like you're saying, like nobody, Tynant was this like person, and nobody tried to, I don't know, take you down, as it were, until like later events. I feel like that has to do with Andrew, you as a person, having more experience with the game than
No one could stop me.
Well, what I liked about the whole situation with Tynant was that it felt like a weird sort of medieval church state thing that was going on, and Tynant was like, there was the Pope and then several anti-popes, and like it was very much this weird kind of pseudo ideological conflict. Because it was a non-secular authority, right? That it was like, there are these ghosts, which is like functionally just a stand-in for like gods or whatever. And so seeing that kind of rotate around that thing, and like you said, stuck between two things where there's this divine authority, and then there's the people and the people's interpretation of the divine law, and then the literal like divinity changing its mind or like replacing Tynant with something that was more effective for their purposes.
More effective, or maybe just more subservient, because like the way that I ended up playing Brace Hocus was very like, what do you want of me? Like, what can I do for you?
That's
and less
true.
like, now I have all of this power and
Well,
like
I mean, the Hocus is just a brainer on a larger scale, right? Like a brainer is almost always beholden to somebody with more physical like power, because a brainer on their own is you can manipulate one person at a time, but if you come up against like a gang of people, you can't you can't puppet strings everybody.
yeah.
So the brainer is vulnerable without Jafar needs the Sultan to survive. And then when you go to the Hocus, you gain access to a larger group of people. But as we saw in the big like temple fight, you're still their servant. You still belong to them because you can't just tell them what to do without changing.
It's not a gang.
Yeah, without changing your method of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
What's
so
interesting to me is that at no point in all of this whole like conversation in the temple, no one was like, well, what would be like the right thing to do?
yeah.
Right? Like we gotta wait. We never went there.
Yeah, and what would be the right thing? Yeah, we never did. It's true.
Right? No one was ever like, oh, that's so like, I can't believe you did that. That's so awful. Like I had to like drown someone with my own hands in a shallow bucket of water. And no one was like,
Well, I love that we look, and we're expected to, and this is a part of the design, but we look to our moves, and there isn't a move like when you sit down and just like talk things out and figure out what the right thing to do is. There's no move for that. You only have moves to try to get what you want.
There are moves that exist in the game
Yes.
that are like, if you take my advice, you get one forward.
But that's
But
that's
isn't
manipulation. That's
But
not.
that isn't necessarily like the best thing. You could do it, but
yeah, it's not everyone at the table talks about it for a bit, agrees what the best course of action would be, and then if you
Yeah.
do that,
Like if you look at the moves, even the most conciliatory moves, the moves in which you're not shooting anybody, are how do I get my way, right? Seduce and manipulate is not discuss reasonably. Go
you
aggro.
don't come to a compromise.
Yeah, there's no compromise move. Compromise is a lesser form of success on some of those other more manipulative moves, and I think that's
actually,
by design.
Adam, it's not even. I
Right.
don't think there are any moves where you actually get like give them part of what they want.
No,
and
it's
get part of what you want.
I was thinking
There's
about
nothing like
I was thinking about like seize by force of the battle move. Even if no one succeeds dramatically, you both just get fucked up. Like
yeah, right. Like just no one gets it right. Like the game is very, I think, deliberate. I'm
Right.
sure about making this be about characters who are like uncompromising
I think
and really driven.
I think
right?
my favorite thing about the Power by the Apocalypse system, and varying games do this in varying degrees of subtlety, right? I think that Apocalypse World is quite subtle about this, but I think my favorite example of this being really clear about the idea of moves and MC moves and like where the players have control is in Sagas of the Icelanders, which is a game about, on the surface, it's a game about being Vikings, but see, chat's already twigging to what I'm about to talk about. On the surface, it's a game about Viking settlers in Iceland, but it's really a game about gender, and players who are playing male characters have certain moves, and players who are playing female characters have certain moves. And men and women in that game have different ways to get what they want, but there are places in which they have no authority. Like men cannot talk about stuff to get at what they need. They can't they have to fight or boast or like. If they try to talk about something, if a character who's a man in that game goes to an NPC and says, look, Egil, we need to talk about this. Somebody's going to get hurt. That's just looking to the GM to be like, what does Egil do? And I can be like, he stabs your face. Like, you gave me the authority there because you have no move. And I think that it's really interesting that the gaps are maybe more design-wise more important to Apocalypse World than the moves themselves, because they say places where you are not going to get what you want. Right, like you have no narrative positioning for this. You have to use the tools that are available to you.
yeah.
Apocalypse World, a game of people with hammers,
Right.
where everything's a nail.
Well, and that's what makes the opening of the moves, the advancement of the moves, so interesting in terms of I still like I very definitively think that Apocalypse World is a game in which the pacing is defined by the advancements that the characters take, because.
Yeah.
if you go slowly, if you advance slowly, the game lasts longer because it pulls out that arc. But also, as you choose advancements, it definitely pulls the game into a different space. Like, what would the game have been like if, while Dice was trying to get at Rolf Ball, someone else had made the Seduce and Manipulate and hit a 12 and be like, cool, Rolf Ball's my ally now. They belong to me. The MC can't touch them, and now the only thing that can kill them is Dice, and I'm way more invested in engaging that conversation. Right, it really changes up how the game plays, by way of the results of the dice.
Yeah.
But what's super cool about I think the advancements and the way that the dice work and stuff is that, looking back at a game of Apocalypse World, you can very specifically call out certain roles as being split points for the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Like the way that driving Rolf Ball off the cliff one, the way that went, that's very specifically the results of how you rolled. I'm thinking in this game, the biggest one of those, the big multiverse split where the game could have gone a very different direction, was the bleeding, the Maelstrom and Nipperkin and that whole thing. Like that very definitively was like, this is a fork in the road for this game. We're going to go this way instead of this other way.
The like fail where Dave still got, like Ferris still got what they wanted from Nipperkin.
And you were just like, okay.
Yeah.
That was an interesting moment.
That was definitely a big one.
Never trust those. Those are always
Like, okay, you get the thing, but I failed the roll. It's fine.
Oh, sure, you can have it. I'm busy totally ruining everything.
Yeah, Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about that moment? Because I mean, I think it was really important for that reason, definitely. But how did that feel for you?
Yeah, nothing bad happened about that for me, ever.
That's true. I mean,
I succeeded that role. The role failed forward into the rest of the world in a way that I didn't have to care about a huge amount until I was confronted about it by Tynant. But then, I don't know. I don't know, actually. I'm curious as to whether people picked up on the fact that, Adam, you're talking about having to be careful sometimes with certain players about losing stuff that they think is cool. And I know I'm not good at that. I know I'm really bad at that. And I guess to kind of like preface the rest of the stuff that I'm saying, I don't really actually like Apocalypse World. Right? It's not the kind of thing that makes me that I would choose to do. But it was interesting because with this group, I was happy to play it and to see kind of where things went and get a bit uncomfortable about it. Just because it is about, there was like the possibility for me to lose things that I like during it. Like I like the progression thing. This is becoming a little bit about like you're getting some weird glimpses into the psychology of me and how like what specific things
dig around in the mind of
things I find a little bit tricky and
get in there
engaging with. But overall I was really happy with how Ferris went, including that split, because progressing towards a specific thing which already existed and having an NPC with me made it a lot easier, because even though my character was kind of in control of it, I could sort of defer responsibility for all the bad things that were occurring.
That's always nice.
Yeah.
And, like externalizing that, it was much easier for me to play. And also because being a savvy head, you don't have to deal with like feelings and
It's all about the
other
objects.
people. Yeah, and it's about upgrades, doing your work, and
You were really bad at that.
What part?
Doing your work.
barter is hard. Like,
Called
I
out.
don't
Holy
like having to
shit.
do barter. I don't like barter. I mean, it's good. It's a clever mechanic, and it worked. I always had to be indebted to somebody somehow, but
I feel like
yeah, I just wasn't
I
ever.
ended the game with like 4 barter. I never.
Yeah, that
Right.
barter has always been a thing in Apocalypse World. You've always been able
Oh.
to use it to buy things and whatever. But in this version of Apocalypse World, there's that lifestyle move or whatever we were making at the beginning. That definitely is new to second edition.
I mean, so one thing that we fucked up is that the water bearer is supposed to get their lifestyle paid for every single session. So honestly, I would have been so fucking rich having cult and being the water bearer. It's just like, cool, your lifestyle's free, and here's like 2 barter every session.
Yeah, in
Wow.
a game that's fundamentally about scarcity, I felt like barter was actually kind of fucking easy to come by, and y'all were in a position to like support each other. Like if you didn't have barter, like I never felt like there was much pressure around barter. Like
No.
it didn't feel like you were gonna be like, oh shit, I don't have enough to pay for myself, and everybody hates me. Like someone was always there to be like, yep, I got lots of barter. Here you go.
It was weird. I don't think I was ever, I don't feel like I ever felt that scarcity, and I don't think Ferris did either,
Mhm.
because when you look at what you pay for your lifestyle, I don't need to eat, I need to drink. It just doesn't matter, and it lent itself really well to the fact that I started every session, I think, after session 2 with no barter. I never made any in the entire game. And
Well, because you had people. Yeah, I mean, I think that to be fair, these were fairly. It was two fairly like well off playbooks, and then 2 playbooks that were attached relatively easy to either like fictional structures or other PCs.
Or to those well off people.
Yeah, so
I mean,
it
the
wasn't-
brainer starts off with a fair amount of barter. I was surprised, and then I spent most of the time just mooching off of everybody.
I mean, honestly, if you like even a brainer, like you start with enough to get by whatever 3 sessions. Like say you start with 3 barter, that's 3 sessions where you don't have to worry. And then if in any one of those 3 sessions you work a gig, bam, there's 3 more sessions. Like it didn't feel like the pressure was very high.
Which I think
Like-
is fine, if only because like that wasn't our focus, right? Like
Well, it wasn't our focus. I think it wasn't our focus because it was easy. Right, like it
Maybe.
would have been a focus had it been harder. If it was like, cool, nobody has barter this session, you're all like in a bad way. But that never happened because
What
of
I
the
will
playbooks
say
and the choice that we made.
Is that we were also pretty cagey with our barter, that we didn't spend it to get other things.
Right, like you were doing a lot of bribing of
We
each
used
other.
it only for, And then the other thing is that we were not made to pay very often for like extra other things, nor did we pursue other things that we would need to buy. So I think a lot of it was us hedging super hard against the barter mechanics, essentially.
Well, yeah, like if there was any kind of like, let's say Dice had a motorcycle and it needed fixing, like that would definitely be an instance where barter could have been used in the fiction. But like it's just a choice that we made to not, like you said, engage that mechanic, not to. I mean, we made up an in-game currency that was not barter.
Well, but we used
it was
barter.
represented.
We used barter to represent it. But yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I think like this is the thing. I felt like if I wanted to make the lifestyle thing relevant, I had to aggressively. Like I could have been like, okay, cool. The piping in the temple is busted. You need to pay for that shit. Or your workshop is falling apart. You got to pay for that shit. Or your violation glove stops working. But like that felt like the least interesting thing I could do at any given moment. I had so many more other things on failed rolls, like so many more other hard moves that felt more fun.
It's
that it just
weird.
never came up.
I think barter as a thing that's being further enforced is kind of strange, because while it makes a lot of sense and thematically it's very, very appropriate for Apocalypse World, like having to keep track of a scarcity specifically and having drain all the time, like regardless of what else you're doing, is very apocalyptic. It seems a little bit to me like something that you might rely on a bit more if you're a less interesting GM or MC, because you're not taking the opportunity to have a real scarcity that is tied to your threats that isn't that mechanically enforced. Like you say, it's more interesting to do a hard move that plays into something else than to deplete a counter even
Yeah.
if it is a good like representative and thematic counter.
And I think that's the thing, is like one of the MC's moves is make them pay, right? Is it like deciding to say like your gun jams, you need to buy ammo, whatever, like to hit the gear. But that always felt, it always felt kind of like small and not that relevant. But what I also think is interesting is that this ties, for me as an MC, this ties very directly into the way that the threats are structured now, right? Like I'm gonna drag okay, y'all are dragged over to the threat screen. So it used to be,
Oh yeah.
it used to be that Cesius, I'm gonna move your art for a second. So it used to be that you arranged threats by the type of scarcity they were connected to, right? So thematically, you would have, here is a front. This front represents a bunch of things that may or may not be connected, but they are all thematically the same in the sense that they are all tied to a scarcity of water or a scarcity of safety or a scarcity of kindness, right? Like they're thematically tied together. And in that way, scarcity is easier to manage as a GM because it's a little bit more obvious and it's mechanically relevant, right? There's nothing in second edition in which the scarcity is actually mechanically impacted, except the kinds of scarcity that cause D-harm, right? Except food, water, like those ones in the game.
Yeah.
And so now what you do is you assemble a map, which I didn't really use because I didn't like it that much, because it wasn't for me a tool that was as good as the front system. Now it's just a bunch of threats that are literally or figuratively geographically related to the PCs. Now I like threats. I think threats are great, but the map thing was never really that relevant to me.
Right, and
y'all can.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, I think this owes more to the fact that you are very experienced with this and very experienced at GMing in general. I think we've kind of been like portraying it a little bit negatively, but I think in terms of designing the game and promoting the kinds of gameplay that you expect or would like from the system, they're both very good mechanics, encouraging those, but they were a little bit they were just kind of unnecessary. They were less interesting ways to accomplish the things that you could do without them, and in engaging with them, like you say, you're taking a move that could be something more applicable to both the players or the fiction itself, instead of just engaging with the less integral mechanics.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would do as a player, if I wanted to try to engage that more, and I think, Andrew, you started to talk about this a little bit, you could very easily play someone who has a recognizable source of barter. I'm thinking in first edition, this would have been the operator, but now someone who focuses on doing gigs, who has a business, you could do it with the Maestro D or the Hardholder or whatever, but using that barter in game constantly to get shit that you want, like throwing it at NPCs to be like, do what I want, here's one barter, do what I want, here's one barter, go kill him, here's a barter, right? Like throwing that money around and being a little bit more of like a kingpin figure rather than doing things personally. And I think that didn't necessarily happen because like our Maestro D was a very get things done with your own two hands kind of character. And so we didn't get a Maestro D who
there was a wheeler and dealer, a puller of strings.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have that sort of
so
spider.
My thoughts on the whole like barter thing is, one, Adam, yes, absolutely, like use it more for its, like what it can do for you. But also I feel like you could play a game also where like time was more stretched out, it was less moment to moment, and you were at like a bit more of a remove.
Well, I mean,
and barter becomes more significant as well because you're working at more of a...
But except that it doesn't, which is what I found frustrating about it, is that the move triggers at the beginning of the session, not when time passes.
This is true.
So you're not, unless you hack the game to be like, when time passes, roll the lifestyle move, you're cheating by calling for it.
But what I mean to say is more that putting things on a broader timeline leaves more room for people to work gigs, leaves more room for people to like hire other characters to do things. and I could envision a game in which it was more relevant.
I
but
think
it's like
you
everyone
would
else is
have to.
interested in that being the case, which in our game it was not. So
Yeah, I think you would have to make custom moves for that though, because the only MC call for barter is that lifestyle move. You don't get to force paying barter except at the beginning of the session.
yeah, or when people miss sometimes.
Yeah, or when they miss and it makes sense. So yeah, I mean, even stretching out the time, even saying like, all right, 6 weeks pass, you can be like, well, great, I paid my barter at the beginning of the session. You could say 10 years pass, I still paid my barter. I have the same barter. So
True.
it does require a very easy, very tiny like change. And I don't think, I mean, it's a pedantic point to even argue that you wouldn't do that, but by the mechanisms.
And also on the flip side though, right? If you're playing moment to moment all the time, and it's just like, over like you spend 3 sessions to play out a single day or like 2 days, you've paid like 3 barter for those sessions. Like, I think I think part of why that's there is to try to enforce a certain pace of the game.
Yeah.
We very like bullheadedly ignored that, right? Like so much of this, I think, is about how all of us play the game.
Yeah, we just kind of did.
I mean, let's not undermine the fact that there were several periods through the game where we were like, a week has passed, 2 weeks have passed. Like this campaign took place. If you look at the first series, that campaign took about a week of in-game time. It was a very narrow window. This one was like several months because there were periods where we were like 2 or 3 weeks go by. But barter didn't interact with that. Really,
I feel like our pacing was more true to like what the game would expect of us.
Yeah.
In this one, like I feel like if you want to think of it this way, like we did a better job of having an apocalypse world like pacing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about the types of actions we were causing, like the deharm in terms of the dehydration and the drugs and withdrawal, like all of those things require space.
Right, but not that much. Like the only thing that'll kill you faster than not having water is not having oxygen. Like literally by the mechanisms of the game. Like deharm for food is quite slow. But
water is 3 days.
Yeah, but deharm for water is like, cool, 3 days pass, everyone's dead. So it is, because again, this is the water bearer being about water, is that it does set that 3-day timer where you're like, I embargo you, cool, 3 days from now, everyone is dead. Or you come fight me or change my mind.
Yeah,
Like me.
this feels like more evidence of more experience leading to not necessarily having to engage with some of the mechanics to a certain extent, because what we ended up doing in terms of pacing was keep the rolls failing forward or rolling until the momentum slowed down. And that's when we did time skips in between sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We never, for the sake of it or for the sake of it making sense as to when we ought to pay barter, skipped scenes that ought to have happened.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's sort of two things at play there, right? Like, I want to call out Sagas of the Icelanders again for being good about this, in that Gregor in the book specifically says, like, there are a bunch of, like, at the beginning of a session, make this moves, right? Like, that game is about seasonal changes. Like, when a session changes, it's like, cool, now it's fall, now it's spring, now it's winter, right? Like, you go through these changes. But he also calls out in the rules that a session is not when you start the game and when you end the game. It's whenever you fucking feel like making a session start or finish, right? You can be like, cool, we've still got 3 hours of game left, but let's put a bookend on spring. Now it's summer. Do the session moves. Like, it's because a session is a non-narrative function of time.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I think that if you were playing a game that was everyone was always together, like if you were like a road traveling game or whatever, like y'all were split up a lot of the time, and it didn't feel fair to be like, all right, Ferris, you failed your move, you failed thing speak. 6 weeks later, right? Because then everybody else, I have to be like, you just lose 6 weeks of time. What were you doing? Because there was always shit to do.
We were in this like weirdly separate position for a lot of the game, and it's disparate from like my previous role-playing game experience in that most of the time you are through maybe not true to the narrative means like together for some reason.
Yeah.
which is like generally my D&D experience of like we're together because reasons, I guess.
I mean,
Well,
most
it's like you make a party that's like a kobold and a drow and a human. Like,
Yeah.
why would these people be together ever at all, except for they're an adventuring party?
most
you know?
most games
Subscribers to Edgelords monthly.
most games I think are reliant on the group, right? Most games you are a party or a coterie or a cabal or whatever. You're a functionally tied up element.
gang.
But in Apocalypse World, and I don't actually think that divided narrative space is.
I don't think it did either.
I don't think that it's that unusual for Apocalypse World. Like in mostly in my experience in Apocalypse World, it is about you start here and you drift to your own space, and you might move to other players' space, but there's a lot of that. This is the spotlight now. This is the spotlight over here. You might move from one spotlight to the other, but I don't know. Have you found that to be the case, Andrew, in your games? Like, I find that they definitely like drift that way.
I mean, I think that to varying degrees this happens, and that in this game we've just done, we were in a pretty good space in terms of like, even when we were apart, we were engaging with connected elements. So we never felt that separated. And I've played games where that was less the case, and it was more just like everyone's just doing these like totally unrelated, totally divergent things.
Yeah, four one-player games.
I mean,
and then by contrast, there was the first series of Apocalypse World that we did on Roll20, which was much more tightly connected, and I really, really liked that. And like playing Blades, one of the things I really like is that we just like we're always working together, you know, and that there's a certain cleanliness to the narrative that creates, which is very
what is I wish that I had. I don't have the PDF on this computer, so I can't quote him directly. But John Stone in the Nightmares Underneath quotes this like explicitly and is like, your job as a player is to be a part of a functional group, and that is part of the premise of the game. Apocalypse World is explicitly the opposite. Apocalypse World is you start off as allies. You're not enemies now, but you might become that way, and by choice of playbook and by narrative role, you end up like, I'm the hard holder. I hate you. You're the hocus. You hate me. Let's fight. And then the other characters are underneath that.
I'm sort of a fan of the whole like spotlight here, spotlight there sort of mechanic, only because regardless of like how you, I like to see the details. I like to see the gritty by themselves aspects of like the characters that are involved. And the way that comes up oftentimes is in those moments, you know, where it's like, I am on my own. I am doing a thing. It is to do with me. Nobody else is influencing it. Nobody's rolling moves to stop me. What am I doing? You know, like that sort of interaction for me is like fairly interesting. And I really like sort of like digging and seeing what other people dig up when they do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, though, there's also like we're all playing a game together and interacting with each other rather than just interacting with ourselves and like Adam's NPCs. Like,
sure.
It's super valuable. And I felt like there was a lot of drive personally to like, okay, I want to get into the space where these other characters are because I haven't had a chance to interact with them. You guys are all really great role players, and I want to have that opportunity, you know?
I'm definitely not saying like, hell yeah, let's just play 4 one-player games and like never meet up, never. I think that it's very important to have those interactions as well, because what's the worth of a character if you're just writing your own story in a role-playing game? You know what I mean? Like, if there's no interaction, you could just be writing like a novel.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
and that's different, you know, and that requires no rules to do that. You know, the interaction between characters is where it gets interesting as like a story together. You know. But I think that small pieces of a story apart are important to make the characters like interesting. I don't know how to put it any other way. Like it's not just like I am the person who always gets shut down every time I try and do anything because my character is sort of an asshole. You know what I mean? You can like
that's charitable.
You can like explore how much of an asshole they are. You know, like in a space where their limits are the limits, you know?
I think to your point, the characters. So a character on a sheet is nothing. A character in your mind is especially nothing. The only character that exists is the character that is in front of us in action right now, and those characters are defined by the pieces that are around them. And sometimes it's nice, like I completely think that it's important because it is a group activity and we're doing this thing. It's nice to be able to bounce ideas off each other through our characters, but sometimes it's nice to have space from the other characters to be like, okay, I don't need dice yelling at me. I would like to explore my character for a minute without that happening. And if you enforce the group thing, then it definitely creates a singular dynamic. But I also think that the purpose of those moments is to help define yourself in an alone.
When we go back to the group.
In a group
Exactly,
space,
to bring something.
I-
You bring something back. I also think that one of the biggest, sort of most clear indicators of a player's ability to play a role-playing game maturely, which is to say not that they're being a grown-up, but that they have experience playing, is to be a good witness, right? Is to be able to be engaged in a scene that they have nothing to do with, to pay attention and to listen and to be able to remember those things to call on later as informing their play, and not just tune out when they're not like on stage. I think.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. What'd you say?
Get out of here.
Yeah, I think, you know, this group does really well. I mean, aside from Apocalypse World, just in general, like I feel like this group does really well with the idea of those things being interesting, you know, and I personally find it very easy to listen to.
Yeah.
No, it's not like I'm ever like, oh, come on, like when's my turn?
Well,
it was never a situation for me during this game where it was like, okay, this is my part in between break 1 and break 2 where I don't do anything.
Well, and this
and I never thought while we were playing, oh fuck, you know, like
right. Well, this speaks directly to Vincent's analogy of role-playing games being a conversation, because being good at a conversation is more about listening actively and hearing what someone is saying and being able to internalize and understand that than it is about speaking. And that sometimes when we play role-playing games, we are not as good at that, and we're just sitting there waiting for our turn to do our funny voice and get attention. And so I think that learning and playing games that teach you how to do this, which isn't to say that Apocalypse World does any of that, but I think that as a player, it's definitely an interesting skill to learn. I also think that we have, as players, we have two audiences, right? We have the audience of each other, right? My goal in the game is to play to you as players and to engage you mechanically and to engage you, but we also have the substrata of another audience watching us play for each other. And so that definitely impacts and affects things. And I actually think that it allows you to shift out of, and this is why I've never been a fan of forcing players not to have chat open. Like I would never ask or expect that, because I think that when you are not on stage, you can listen as a member of that secondary audience. You can fall back into that space.
Yeah, you can join the chat.
You can join chat and talk about it and be like,
hell yeah.
Wow, isn't it cool that Ferris and Brace are having this scene? Okay, guys, I gotta go. That's my cue. I gotta get back on stage. But like you're in the secondary audience as an active engager. And I honestly think that that's way more engaging than playing in person, where if you check out, you check the fuck out, right? Like you can't, there's no half measure. There's no second strata for you to lean
There's
into.
no audience to fall back into.
Yeah,
right?
and I love it. I think it's so cool. I think that's a huge
It's
advantage.
definitely a unique like Twitch experience. Like,
Well, and then there's also the really cool experience on like having this recorded, where it's like you have your character who exists in your head, who is like all the things that you've thought about determining like what your previous experiences that you haven't brought into the game yet, and then you go back and you watch what you have brought into the game and how that informs your character and decisions like going forward. Like there was a lot of times where we were coming into an episode and I would be watching the previous episode just before so that I can like backpedal, okay, this happened and where does that lead me? Or like when I was in the game in the moment playing it, I wasn't entirely certain like where I was coming from, and then going back and watching it, I can get a better idea to be able to confidently move forward.
Yeah, I think that's an advantage that we have that our predecessors maybe did not. I mean, I'm sure that there are people who recorded their games for their own sake, but engaging in this sort of group activity. The other thing too, I think, is that we consciously, unless you fight it, there is an influence, right? There's an influence in decisions. There's an influence in how we approach the game based on the way that the chat interacts with our fiction.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's very direct and very personal because I interact with chat directly during my MC turns to be like, cool, what do you think would be a cool thing to happen here? I can't think of a custom move for this. What do you think? Like, what would Rolf Ball do? When should we have Jeanette roll into town? Like, that's a way for me to outsource some of that labor and to create a more sort of chat inclusive experience for the game at large. But I definitely know that as a player, I'm influenced by that as well, right? Like I have characters that have drifted in a particular direction because of positive reinforcement from chat, right? And in the same way, when the other players really riff off of something, if they really like the way you're characterizing a character, you'll tend to guide into that direction because we're all having that conversation and you're speaking in a way that appeals to the other players.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely in terms of like when chat responds a certain way, I feel differently about maybe what I'm doing. Not a whole huge, margin, but it's definitely cool.
I mean, I'm sure that you and Blue Jay and I all especially are comfortable and familiar with that because that's what we do all day.
Yeah.
Right? Is like do a thing and see how people react to it. And when they react positively to it, we tend to like lean into that direction. That's how you build a brand, right? You see the things that people like and you take that into account. It's just that in these games, the characters aren't us.
Yeah.
They're a thing we're making.
Oh, I'm reminded of something which, made barter really relevant in the game that we shouldn't overlook. The eggs.
Every time I hear that, it doesn't matter how many times, it makes me like smile and laugh a little. Like every time I died during that. Like,
oh my God,
I couldn't recover. Like
I can't
so
remember.
Absurd to me.
I can't, oh yeah, no. So I was DMing Court of Swords, which is the 5th edition D&D game that I play for roleplay, and they were interacting with someone went out to get a chicken to sacrifice for a dark ritual, and I definitely, and at the time I didn't even realize I was making the reference, but as soon as I said it and people started reacting, I was like, oh yeah, that's where that idea is from. I definitely had the chicken merchant mention that the chickens make eggs. The eggs just come out of the chicken. Yeah,
they come out of the chicken.
Eggs just come out of it. But yeah, that was.
Imagine it. My favorite part of that conversation was imagine how many other things like that come out of this chicken that Lamprey has tried to eat.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Stupid Lamprey. Yeah. It's a fascinating thing to see the narrative develop around the influence of the players, the influence of the mechanics, and then now this added layer that we have of chat introducing this stuff. I think it's fascinating. So at the behest of not sitting here for 4 hours talking about this, I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Is there any other questions or feelings that you have, buried deep down that you would like to tell? What was on your mind vis-a-vis Apocalypse World? I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to take stage. Does anybody have anything that they urgently want to discuss or want to make sure we talk about?
Okay, I was gonna wait for somebody else to do it because I am always this person, but sure. I typically in elf fashion, I have more to say about how it felt playing than what I thought about the game. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think that's the same conversation, right? Like, because
I don't necessarily think that it is, because if we're talking about Apocalypse World and sort of what I thought of the way that Apocalypse World plays and the rules of that and what that is, that's a different discussion to the characters that I played and the way that felt and the way that was. Those are two different things. And I recognize that a lot of my opinions and a lot of the way that I interact with a game is through not assessing the game, but the way that everybody plays it you know what I mean? Like,
sure,
but
yeah.
you're
I
not-
mean, what I meant there though is that the game informs every thought and feeling you have about it.
True,
Whether you're
true.
talking like you're not necessarily talking about the mechanics, but your character exists as a byproduct of the mechanisms of the game, right? Your playbook bounded the character, and the way you interacted with the fiction came from.
I mean,
from the
I
mechanism.
I think you're right. Yeah, you're probably right about that. But
Yeah.
regardless, I played two different characters in this game, and I was really, really unsure as to how that would go. You know, when I decided that like Dice was gonna die, and I decided she was gonna die because there were other options. She could have lived just fine. You know, I could have made her less hard or changed her playbook or whatever, but I decided she was gonna die, and I was worried that that was the last relevant thing I was gonna do because I put myself behind the general advancement of the game by doing that, because you go back to like 0 advances, you know, and you're back at before, and everybody else is at like 5 or 6 advances, and we're starting to get into advanced moves and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. Like the second character was not irrelevant. In fact, I would say that she was maybe more relevant than Dice was.
Well, you have context for a second character, right? A first
It's true.
character defines the context. The second character exists within it, right? The second character is a reaction to the game. The first character creates the game space for the second character to exist in.
Yeah, I suppose. It was interesting. I went to places with Heron that I didn't really think I was gonna go. When we were talking about like broadcasting stuff, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like I wasn't sure how chat was gonna react to like, all right, it's time for some of this, you know, like carving people up shit, like, and we'll see what people think about that and whatever. But it's like I was trying to think of something that was like scary to me,
Yeah.
and the idea of like that kind of, I don't know how to put it like another way, but like mutilation is scary to me.
Yeah.
So like playing in that space where like I wasn't entirely comfortable, and I wasn't entirely comfortable doing it, but I really enjoyed interacting with it. It's sort of like cool for me, you know? And I hope that was cool for, and I know that like we did the whole like, okay, let's not describe such and such a thing to an extent that it maybe would have been had that not been said, and like we're all sensitive to that, and that's perfectly fine and acceptable, and I'm glad that that came up because I wouldn't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I don't know, I was happy playing Apocalypse World. It was a good game. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
I'm
Playing the
glad.
characters I played was very enjoyable.
I'm glad. Me too. I enjoyed your characters. I thought I liked Dice, but I thought Heron was I don't want to say better, but I felt more like connected to. I felt Heron was more real.
Yeah.
Dice was fun.
I mean, Dice was cheesy, get out of my way, and Heron was like insidious, fucking shit up, like in a bad way, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it was interesting seeing the two characters one after the other too, and the ways that they interacted with the world. Yeah, I thought it was very cool. Any last words, Tynan Swift? Do you have thoughts, Andrew? Closing statements?
I mean, as long as everyone was like not too uncomfortable with me being this like creepy, weird, abusive parent / lover, whatever, for like I loved that whole horrible codependent weirdness of the Brace Tenant fusion. And I appreciate that it may have been really uncomfortable as well. That was part of the fun.
I always wonder in these games about the special moves because they're there and they're always present. And every time I play Apocalypse World, it's like, is anybody going to do it? Are they going to do it in this game?
Oh, well, actually,
that's something that stands out to me too, because that's not something I have any experience with in terms of like my relative newness to roleplay in general, but also roleplay where seduction and sex is a part of the game. And Monster Hearts, that was a big deal too, like almost bigger than it is was in our game of Apocalypse World, but that existing and having to like as a like adult person like not just like giggle and blush and like just fall on the floor, but like actually like play through this like as like a in character thing. And obviously like it's something that I'm still working on. Like I still like get frazzled and like lose my like shit sometimes, but like it's not challenging in the way that material like Heron's mutilation is challenging for play because it makes you uncomfortable. Well, like sexuality and intimacy is challenging for play because it also makes me personally like somewhat uncomfortable in terms of like it's not addressed very often in my life. So that was an interesting thing for me to have mechanics supporting like in terms of like this is something that you can do in game and how do you use it or not, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of it being a mechanical element of the game, by putting in the game, if this happens, this mechanical thing triggers, is as much a statement about the content of the game as saying go aggro is a thing or seize by force is the thing. This is just like one in a list of things that if you do this, something significant will occur mechanically to your character. And so that calls it out. That makes it a thing that could occur, and should be treated with the same amount of weight as any other piece of the mechanics.
And for my part too, it's like I didn't imagine that that Brace and Tynant were like actually having sex necessarily. It was just like about intimacy in general, that they were like having this relationship that was close enough that it was like, you know, as good as.
Yeah, and I think that both of those characters, like whatever equals sex to them is very different from whatever equals sex
well,
to me.
That's not even like that fantastic a concept. It's not even like because this is apocalypse world, the characters in this weird post-apocalyptic setting get to like define what sex is. Like that's what real life is.
Yes.
Right? Like that's how real life actually is. Yeah. It's not like a magical fantasy thing. That's how it actually is in real life. So yeah, I think that's important too.
You know, there's no like, and now it is sex line where it's just like, cool, okay, like a thing went in a thing and then boom.
Right.
Sex
That's what it is.
Well, and that's what makes it funny in that it is mechanical, in that to do it, and if you do it. Like when you do something narratively, the move triggers. You just have to talk about, just like all the other moves, are we triggering this move or no? Like, is this happening or not happening? It doesn't have to be when this occurs. Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought that was a really cool, fun, like very interesting relationship that we had going on between Tynant and Brace. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate Blue Jay going there, doing that. It was intense and yeah, a little like uncomfortable, but glad that we did it.
No, it was definitely a good thing. I loved that because I feel like Heron and Ferris, their characters, like at the end, were very much like spotlighted in their own goals. They met in places where those interacted, but they had a separate like agenda, as it were. And the comparing that to how like wrapped up in each other's like shit Tynant and Brace was just a really interesting visually, well, narratively, I guess. I enjoyed seeing that difference where these are two characters who are doing stuff that kind of interacts, and these are two characters who like are just like fucking with each other in all sorts of different ways, and like how that changed their relationship and how that resolved itself.
I'm really fond of the Brainer as a playbook, not only because they are a watermark for the level of solo weird that is present in the game. Like a Brainer raises that level by merely existing. But because I think that the Brainer is an interesting metaphor for relationship power dynamics, in that the Brainer pretty much always ends up being owned by someone, but 9 times out of 10, they're topping from the bottom, right? They're like, yes, I'm your property, but secretly you do what I want. And I think that creates some very interesting narrative stuff. Like for me, the Brainer falls into a very comfortable narrative space. I love stories about that kind of character, so it's always fun for me to have one in the game and to explore what that looks like. And it almost always is satisfying. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts about your first Apocalypse World campaign, Blue Jay? Any other feelings about that?
Yeah. I think it's like I like what Elf was saying in terms of like I came at it from a very character and motivation and like actor standpoint because that's like my experience. It was like a campaign of improv, you know, with some ground rules.
Totally.
And like that's where I came at it from, and I thoroughly enjoyed it from that, which is it's different from how D&D is more like from my experience, like you have to be more familiar with the mechanics, whereas this is like, okay, I want to do this thing, like where does that fall? Like, okay, then we'll do that. And I feel like one of the things moving forward for me, one of the things that I like Brace as a character, and you're saying like brainers in general, kind of suffer in the beginning from like a lack of, like for me, Brace suffered from a lack of drive, a lack of motivation, and goal-oriented play. Which was that I didn't know where she was going or what she was doing. And you said that brainers often have that kind of like attach themselves to another character for that motivation. And like I liked how through like evolving to the Hocus, she got a little bit more control and goals. But I still feel like a lot of the way I played Brace, or the way that things just occurred with roles and stuff, was the number of times Brace was unconscious was a lot.
That's really bad for you.
Yeah. And the number of times that Brace was kind of just like going along with the flow, and the number of times that I was like, especially in the last 3 episodes, I think like there were some really good moments, but there were some other times where I was just like, I have to do this thing. How do I get to do this thing? And not actually feeling where my character's motivation was coming from. Which isn't the type of gameplay I like. I don't like being like, I'm just trying to get from point A to point B. I like being like, my character desires this thing to occur. Why do they desire it? Where does that desire come from? And how do they enact it upon the world? And I feel with Brace, like in the last 3 episodes, I kind of was just like, I have this thing inside of me that needs to be let go. Where do I go to do that? And how? And in terms of like where we go with the next game, like I really want to explore more of a character who has I don't know if I'm using this right, but who has like agency, like separate from the group structure, or like because
who has their own like goals and objectives.
Yeah, very much so. Like that's
it's the thing is like Brace didn't have an agenda until she did, and then was literally subsumed by it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just like it's not something that I didn't like. I love that character and I love where she went, but it was such a different thing for me that I really want to like contrast it with a character who like takes more firm hold, I guess.
I found it really interesting when you mentioned like the particular like sort of stance that you took like in role-playing Brace and stuff. Like this is one of the things that I noticed a whole lot when I was playing these 2 characters, was that I learned exactly where my first person versus third person like comfortableness is. You know, like there are certain points where it's like, I need to distance myself from exactly what my character is doing right now. And I've never had that happen before. And I think that's mostly because a lot of my experience like role-playing is live action role-playing. So I am my character. I act my character. Anything that I do is me, you know? And on a tabletop sort of setting, you can change that. You know, you can be like, no, I'm actually watching this from like a camera over here, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Side note.
No, I think that totally makes sense. Dave, parting thoughts on your experience with Apocalypse World?
Yeah, I had fun despite the fact that generally the themes and further the playbooks for Apocalypse World specifically aren't particularly interesting to me. So that was really cool. And I was also interested to hear about the ways that people felt when they were engaging with those in this conversation here. It gives me a much better understanding if I were to play it again.
You've said
run it.
You've said in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I think you've said in the past that you prefer to run Apocalypse World than to play it.
I sure do, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I felt that during the game, in that the moments that it seemed like you were enjoying the most were the ones in which I gave you the ability to just like make things up. Like the sort of highlight stuff from the game weren't, as a contrast to say like the way Elf was playing, they weren't necessarily the like deep characterization of Ferris, but the use of Ferris as a vehicle to introduce things into the fiction.
Yeah, for sure. That's a much much more concise and clear way of saying what I was trying to get across the first time I spoke up. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of interestingness with Apocalypse World, and I think it's worth for everybody who's interested in thinking about how role-playing games work, how they're designed, and how they're played and stuff, to either play or run Apocalypse World, just because it's one of the few instances where everything ties really nicely together in terms of fiction, mechanics, encouraging play through having mechanisms which are both thematically and mechanically reinforcing themselves over and over again. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. And to have an opportunity to play it with you great folks has given me a much better insight into that.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I think we as gamers have experience. We often experience playing a game that we maybe don't enjoy and having fun despite it, but it is nice to play a game and to have fun, to play a game you don't necessarily like or haven't had a lot of positive experience with, and then enjoy it in a way that you didn't expect, or in seeing how it could be enjoyable in a different way. And I think that's really cool. Well, I personally had a lot of fun playing this game. I like Apocalypse World. I was really curious to try second edition out. Thank you, Andrew, for playing one of the new playbooks so we could kind of see how that goes. I feel like the Water Bear, I figured it out just as you were kind of exiting the stage. So the next time there's a Water Bear in play, I think I'll be better prepared to handle it. But it's always cool for me coming back to Apocalypse World, because I've played so much of it. Feels like returning to a place I spent time, right? It would be like going to visit Victoria or Calgary for me. You know, I don't live there anymore, but going back, it's a familiar place. And it's nice to see people try on these forms. Like I've played games with lots of choppers and savvy heads and brainers, and I've been them, and it's really neat seeing the way that you interpret the same prompts and materials as a group. I'm really enjoying playing games that I like with all of you to see that happen.
The other thing on that is, like, through this discussion, maybe only now through this discussion, which is terrible of me, but I've realized that we're all so different in our approach to this game and to every game. I think, like, we have different focuses, and it just works really well. And I love all of you. I adore every single person in this group. I just want to cuddle you all to death.
I mean, I think that's something that's we're really lucky to have, and you know, this has been said both by me and by chat before, that this group feels like, I think, what people hope a gaming group feels like. Like, it feels like we're friends playing games together rather than people playing a game that are able to tolerate one another for the sake of it, which is why I think we can continue to keep playing games together and not just be like, cool, show's done, I guess I'll see you later.
Speaking of games that we're going to play together.
Speaking of
segues. So yeah, we wanted to close off today's discussion by letting you know that we're obviously not disbanding as a group. We're going to keep playing D&D, but we're also going to play another game that is not D&D in the Friday time slot. We're not going too far away from Apocalypse World. We're gonna stay in the powered by the engine. And we're gonna play a game that I have played before, just the once. Have any of you played this game before?
No.
I have never.
Ooh, I'm
but
excited.
I have heard so many good things.
Yes, there are people that I know and care about and trust who have said this is one of their favorite games. It was recently named Austin Walker's one of his games of the year. We're going to be playing the Sprawl, so we're going to be getting our cyberpunk on.
Cyberpunk.
We're gonna take a slight step back from the apocalypse. We're gonna play some slight pre-apocalypse. We're gonna put on our mirrored sunglasses and
It still works.
Yeah.
Still good.
And we're gonna play around in the cybernetic near future. We've done a very little bit of discussion amongst ourselves just around why we would want to play the game. We're saving all the good shit for you. So hopefully in 2 weeks time we'll have all of our overlays done and we'll be ready. I'll let everybody know. You can follow us on Twitter individually and following the Roll20 account, and we'll let you know when the game is starting. But hopefully in a couple of weeks we're gonna do that. We're gonna return to some Apocalypse Engine game and try something different. I wanted to play this not only because of the game, and we'll show you when we play it, the character sheets and the roll macros and stuff in Roll20 are so good.
Oh
They're
my
like,
god, it's amazing.
like literally the nicest looking Roll20 character
It's so
sheets I've ever
beautiful.
seen in my life. Like if you go start a game just to check out the character sheets and how the Roll20 macros work, it's gonna look real nice. So I'm super excited about that. And so we'll have that initial discussion. We'll probably spend just the first session making characters, talking about what cyberpunk means to us, the kinds of things we want to include in the game, media influences, making the corporations for the game, getting all that setup stuff done. That'll be our first session. We'll do a little sort of zero session as soon as we can. So hopefully in 2 weeks after PAX. So I'm really excited personally. Cyberpunk is like
I am beyond hype.
it's my fave.
I'm ready.
It's my fave thing. I love Cyberpunk the most, so I'm pretty excited about it. But that's it. That's it for Apocalypse World, at least for now. I imagine someday there will likely be a Series 3, but this is the conclusion of Series 2 of Roll20 Presents Apocalypse World. For folks who have been with us since the first episode, thank you so much for watching. Whether you were watching it live or on YouTube, we appreciate you hanging out and influencing the game directly or indirectly. Let's shout it out one last time for Apocalypse World. Blue Jay, why don't you start?
Okay.
Us off?
I'm Blue Jay. I played Brace, the brainer, and now she's dead, so that's the thing. You can find me at twitch.tv/BlueJay or Twitter at BlueJay_712. You can also find me here on Thursdays for D&D or twitch.tv/misclicks on Wednesday nights for D&D also, or on my own channel the rest of the week. You'll be able to find me on my own channel after this for, I'm going to read The Portrait of Dorian Gray to you. So if you like people reading you books, I love reading. So that's happening today on my channel later.
Excellent. Thanks, Blue Jay. Dave?
Hello, everybody. I'm at Dave_the_human or twitch.tv/RF. And I don't even know if I'm going to be able to stream tomorrow. I was going to stream tomorrow. I found out during the pre-show, and I was basically sat with my head in my hands that I'd done a third of the work I thought I was supposed to do. So I'm really dumb about that. Please bear with me. I'm finally starting to get things on track. And you might be able to see me do some more stuff if maybe you're interested in it. But until then, you can do watching Twitter. And I would recommend following all these people because they are an okay substitute while you wait.
Brutal.
High praise from Dave. Thank you.
Sure.
Andrew, why don't you go next?
My name's Andrew. I speak for the ghosts of the dead. Feel their justice. Come find me at Comedian Crow on Twitter or twitch.tv/actualfactual. I'm going to stream later today. I'm working on a magical girl anime role-playing game. So I'm probably going to do that unless I just don't feel like it, in which case I'm going to stream myself playing XCOM 2 Long War.
Yes!
Because that game is out and it's rad. So it's it's a win-win for you if you show up there.
Excellent. Elf, you wanna play us out?
Motherfuckers, click my link in the thing, Twitch chat. Alternately, carve my link into your flesh.
Good stuff.
And that's it. That's the outro. It's done.
Do it. Well, I have happily been your MC, David Cronenberg. I mean Adam Coble. Big ups to video.
Cronenberg the world, Adam.
Big ups to Videodrome. Yeah, if you want more of this creepiness, if you liked the all the body horror in this game, yeah, watch Videodrome. Watch The Thing. They're both gross as fuck, and they will scratch that itch. But if you want to follow me on Twitter at Skinny Ghost, I stream at twitch.tv/Adam Coble. Tomorrow I'm going to be GMing the second episode of Nebula Jazz over at twitch.tv/itmejp. We're going to be using Roll20 to play Fate Accelerated. So if you want to see how that works, you want some space action, come check that out. There's lots of role-playing games on the internet. Everyone here is playing them. So you can too. Go to roll20.net, sign up for an account, play a game. We will be back after PAX with more Dungeons and Dragons, and with a little luck, and the gods of the Matrix on our side, will be playing the Sprawl. So we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us here at the end of the world, everybody. Have a good one. See you next time.